if someone's accusing you of infringing their rights, or you believe someone's infringing on your rights. So to start, we're going to start off with trademark. So what is a trademark? And I put kind of the generic description up there, but it's a word, phrase, symbol, or design that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods from one party from another. In other words, it's something that you've created that's distinctive to you, that sets your goods and services apart from someone else. We won't talk much about service marks, but I threw that in there just briefly. A service mark is essentially the same thing as a trademark, except it applies to services. So trademarks apply to goods, service marks apply to services. So a law firm provides a service, that's a service mark if we were to use any of those protections. Commonly, they're both referred to as marks. There is federal registration and state registration of trademarks and service marks. We're going to primarily focus on federal registration because it gives you that broad national protection. And we have people here from all over the country, and anything online has that international reach certainly. So the big deal, one of the big deals, with federal trademark registration is that it gives you presumptive ownership of that trademark, meaning it's yours if you can get it registered, and then also it gives you those presumptive national rights. Trademark protection also gives you the power to exclude others, so that's always kind of an important principle when it comes to intellectual property. It's not so much that you're reserving the right yourself to use it, you're actually including the ability to keep anyone else from using it. And with a trademark, as long as you're using that mark, it's yours. Trademarks, different from patents and copyrights in one major respect. As long as you continue to use your trademark, you can have it forever. And so if you develop a company and that company goes on in perpetuity, your trademark can go on in perpetuity as well. So one of the big things that's important about trademarks is that it has to be distinctive. It has to be something that's unique. It cannot be generic. So I can't trademark law firm. Sorry, nice try. There's 4 different types of marks, like I said, jumped down to number 4 there. Generic marks aren't really marks that can be protected. The first, however, are arbitrary and fanciful marks. Arbitrary mark is a word that's meaningless as to its product. So I've got the Apple logo up there. Apples have nothing to do with computers, but we all know what an Apple computer and an iPad and all of those products that we've come to use for the last many decades. They have developed a very strong and well-known brand with Apple. A fanciful mark is an invented word. We all know what Google is. We've all probably Googled everything this morning. And so let's Google. It's just a made-up word that they came up with. It's a very good brand and has a very good, strong identity. Suggestive marks suggest a connection to the goods, but they're not strictly descriptive. So I've got the Netflix logo up there. Netflix, it suggests to you that they provide movies on the internet, and they always have. And then descriptive marks is mostly just something that describes the market that it's applied to. So American Airlines, it's an airline that provides services in America. Now these arbitrary and fanciful marks are kind of considered very strong marks. That's a good, strong, distinctive brand. Suggestive marks, less so, and then descriptive marks, even less so from that. That would be considered more of a weak brand, and not always are those protectable. You've got to work with the Patent and Trademark Office on getting those registered sometimes. And like I was saying, generic marks, they're not registerable. I can't, it just describes what you do. And so I can't register law firm. So the first part of getting your trademark is what is called clearing the trademark. And what that basically means is you're just going to go out and look and make sure that you aren't coming up with something that's already being used by someone else that might put you in danger of infringing on their rights. So there's several ways to do that. You're looking for similar marks, not something that's identical to you, but just something that's similar to what you have, because that's the standard. You need to have something that's distinctive to you and doesn't create confusion between you and a competitor. Because if it's confusing in that respect, even if it's similar but not identical, that's not going to be protectable because someone else is already using it. So you go about it through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. They've got a search engine essentially on their website that allows you to look for other marks that are registered, other marks that maybe in the past have been registered, marks that are in the process of being registered. So that's kind of more from the legal side. That's the legal search that you have to do. Briefly touch on it, but you can also do state searches if you happen to just be doing business within your state, which I don't think applies to anyone in this room, but that is something as well. And then there's common searches, because you can't just look for protected registered trademarks. You have to look for others who might be using it but just haven't applied for that trademark protection, because they have what are called common law trademark rights, the ability to keep you from using it just by virtue of the fact that they've been using it in a particular region and it's distinctive to them. So you can't just rely on the legal search, you have to also go out and do more of a common search. And so kind of the most common way now to do that is just through internet searches, social media searches, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. So you go through each one of those and kind of check things out, make sure that you're distinctive unto yourself. And then once you've done that, then you've kind of cleared that trademark. You know that you're on your way to getting potential protectable trademark. And that's the first step before you even apply. I should mention too, there are commercial services that provide this. They do that for a fee. So it's something that often can be done either between you and your lawyer, but there are commercial services out there if you need to do a very broad basis. The trademark application process. So the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has jurisdiction over trademarks. That's different. Ernest is going to talk a little bit about copyrights. That's the Copyright Office. So different government agencies. Everything is very user-friendly. Everything is online. Everything is submitted electronically through uspto.gov. It's fairly affordable. $250 to $350 is the application fee. That does not include a lawyer. If you hire a lawyer, if you have a commercial service help you, they're going to have their own fees. But for the most part, it's a fairly affordable process. And it's all done online. It walks you through it. You have to identify yourself as the owner. Something that you do have to provide is you have to describe the goods that it applies to or the services that it applies to, because trademark protection only applies to a particular classification of goods or services. Now that doesn't mean that you're kind of streamlined into only one path. If you want to register your trademark across multiple goods or services, you can do that, but your protection only applies to that particular good or service. And so you want to kind of keep an eye on that, keep a nice broad net that you have up there. And then state trademarks, states vary by state, but they have their own application processes as well. Trademark symbols. We get a lot of questions about this, like when am I allowed to use the circle R on a registered trademark symbol? When should I use TM? What's the difference? How do I use them? So I've got it right there. The trademark circle R symbol can only be used if you have a registered trademark with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Meaning when you get your certificate from the Trademark Office, that means that's when you can start using the circle R. Using it without having that registration is illegal. You cannot do that. But you'll often see TMs or SNs next to logos. I've got University of North Dakota shirt on right now, and they use a TM. What that means is you're kind of giving notice to the rest of the world that I have a brand. I have something that I think is a trademark of mine. I am putting you on notice that even if it's not registered, I consider this my brand or my trademark. And that can be used anytime. And in fact, it should be used. If you have a brand that you're trying to develop, we would highly recommend that you do use the TM or SN depending on your particular business, because that's the way you inform other people that you believe this is your protected brand. It's not required that you use it every time you refer to it. Like the images of the Google logo, Apple logo, Netflix logo, those didn't have the circle R next to them. You're not required to use it in every use, but it is highly recommended that you use it anywhere that you use it prominently. So if you've got a social media page, up at the top, or any time where it's really prominently shown on your social media, you should be using that TM or if you register the circle R. And then location matters. The appropriate place to place these is to the right of your logo. This way for you guys. But on the right hand of your logo, usually it's either a superscript or a subscript, so kind of up at the top or at the bottom. If you're using it in just print material, then you would have, Google register on that after it. So why should you go through the process of protecting your trademarks? Well, it's your brand, right? You work very hard on your business. You've come up with unique ideas that you think have value in the marketplace and create that specific identity to you. That's why you want to protect your trademarks. It's your brand. It protects your distinct brand, your name, your slogans, your logos, whatever that intellectual property that you've created to market yourself and create yourself as a distinct person in the marketplace. That's kind of your idea. So that's why you want to register those things. Make sure you have that tied up and that someone that comes in doesn't come in and try to create confusion with you. I've got a client that created some very nice metal art. They go to a lot of trade shows, they've got a great online presence. They started going to some trade shows and started noticing that there was people trying to copy them. So they shut that down pretty quickly and we were able to do that. It also protects against infringers, creating confusion, like I said, and then this is important, it creates that presumptive ownership. If you register the trademark, you have presumptive ownership in the United States. I say presumptive because it's not absolute. There are situations where you can register it, it goes through the entire process, and then someone steps forward later and challenges your ownership to it, and you're off in a legal proceeding, either with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office or with a district court, federal district court proceeding. I had that happen to a client recently where we had registered a brand for them, and then it was challenged by someone else after the fact, and they filed, the opposite party filed what's called a cancellation petition with the Patent and Trademark Office and challenged it. In that situation, the client was kind of changing their branding anyway. He was going to start to pivot away from that, so it didn't make a lot of sense to exercise and use his resources on that. But that can come up, but you're at least giving a presumptive ownership, and that's a step up then for where you'd be otherwise if you found yourself in an infringement lawsuit with someone saying that they were the owner. You can come forward and say, no, I'm the owner, I've got that registration. And then also for enforcement purposes, this is going to earn this part, but it affords you extra remedies. If you have that actual registered protection, you're going to have more rights if you end up in a lawsuit with someone over infringement. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Ernest. He's going to talk about copyright, and I'll come back for questions and answers later.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the enforcement defense section on enforcement of trademarks and things to building a little bit on what Doug mentioned in terms of clearance and whatnot, and making sure and finding ways to avoid stepping on somebody else's trademark. All right, so let's shift to copyright. Copyright's interesting. There's two types of intellectual property in the United States Constitution: reference to patents and reference to copyright. So they talk about the rights. The limited rights to be granted to authors and inventors. It was important early on in the founding of the country. You think about all the stuff they put in the Constitution. That if people are going to go to the trouble of coming up with creative works or inventions and whatnot, that the courts have some ability to enforce those and protect people's creativity. So what do you get when you get a copyright? One thing is, you get it whether you register or not. So what you get is, like I've come up with something new. I've come up with taken a photograph, I've come up with a piece of artwork that I created, I've written a poem, a novel, and whatnot. I have the exclusive right to copy that and adapt it to do stuff. So if somebody writes a novel, they have a right to write the next version of the novel, they have a right to turn it into a screenplay or a movie and whatnot. That's the exclusive right that they have. They can do all those things. Like performance and broadcast, if I have the copyright interest in the song, I'm the one who gets to perform it. Again, I mentioned copyright is protected upon creation. So tonight you go home and write a poem, the United States copyright law already protects that as an original work. Now we're going to talk about registration a little bit later here in just a minute. that you need to have it registered if you're going to go to court. So that's why the Copyright Office gives you incentives to get it registered. The other nice thing is when you look at the different types of intellectual property, Doug mentioned trademarks. If you keep using them, you can keep it rolling on. There's trademarks in Europe that are 800 and 1,000 years old. A winery in the middle of Italy still has a trademark that's valid after 1,000 years. Copyright is the next in terms of length. You get it, if you're the author of the work, you get it during your life plus 70 years. It gets complicated. The Copyright Office has made it ridiculously complicated, but the basic rule is your life plus 70 years. So you get protection over 100 years. So if you think about like Star Wars, the movie, that'll be still protected by copyright probably until after the year 2100. Conversely, some of Walt Disney's earliest cartoons are going to fall into the public domain starting next year. So that, of course, you realize that creates lots of creative possibilities for people like yourself to have an increasing number of images that you're allowed to use without having to pay royalties. The other nice thing too is, like patents, like trademarks, like copyrights, protection is around the world. So every country, any kind of normal functioning country, protects copyright. Okay, copyright is kind of a basket of things, some of which you are obvious ones, right? You get a book, you get a copyright. Poems, drawings, paintings, photographs. Source code. So if you're software developers, you care about that. Choreography is kind of a strange one. You can actually submit a choreographed dance. That can be protected by copyright. Digital media, multimedia works, architectural plans and drawings. Doug and I have teamed up on enforcing copyright in architectural works. Textile designs. So I'll just mention this in passing, but as opposed to like a t-shirt with an image or a logo of some kind on it, if you create an original like fabric design, that can actually be protected through textile. Okay, these are some examples. These are actors, right? This, you've got a painting that maybe Diego Garcia. I apologize for not knowing that. Famous photograph, Buzz Lightyear at the top. So that's being on there as an image, right? These are things that can be repurposed in different kinds of ways, and I focused on that, and we'll talk about that, given the nature of the industry here. Okay, you might already know the answer to this. Copyright protection in AI creative works. So I write, I want to come up with a drawing, give me a picture of a dog on a surfboard. And you've got this image here. Okay, I'm the one that requested that. I went to ChatGPT and I asked that we create it, and I got that. And that doesn't exist anywhere else except like as a file on my laptop. Is that copyright protected?
No.
What's that?
No.
No, that's correct. It is not. So and here's the reason why. It's not because it's a stupid computer thing that nobody respects and it's not really creative and yada yada. It's because copyright law protects works of human authorship. It was the exact same problem when people tried to get the fundraiser where you could buy a painting by a gorilla. And they put the canvas inside the cell, or the cave where the gorilla is. And they're sitting here painting like this, and then they were auctioning these things off, and of course these were original to that particular gorilla and not protectable. They actually tried to file copyright on them. There was someone recently, I think they were song lyrics, I think that's right, but took their original songs and then had like ChatGPT expand them, adapt them, do something with them. Tried to file copyright. The Copyright Office actually came out with a public opinion that says your original song's good. These that you had added onto by the machine, basically. So you could come up with a database of 1,000 original T-shirt images, and as long as you keep it a trade secret, you're good to go. But once that's out there, if people find out that it's AI generated, they can use it with impunity, for better or worse. Okay, copyright, why protect? In the same kind of way, if you're going to take the trouble of creating a brand, building awareness, building goodwill, and your customers rely on it, your vendors rely on it, it creates stability in the market. People know if they buy something, with the Disney name on it, for example, they know it's legitimate, or they should. If you're going to go to the trouble of creating original designs, original photographs, and commercializing them, you should be the one to monetize it. You should be the one to have that credit. So that's what that gives you. Because why, that's the incentive. Why create it if somebody can just immediately knock it out? And I don't need to tell anybody in this room, this happens with clients all the time. We're constantly chasing people on patent, trademark, and copyright issues for online products. I had a client who makes an electronic lip plumper. I don't use it. But there's multiple patents on it and trademarks. But there was a company that had their own lip plumper. It was not even our clients. They didn't knock the product off, but they were using all of our clients' product images, like photographs of people with big lips and all this. And it got knocked out. So it's like whack-a-mole, but you have to do it before your rights, otherwise get eviscerated, right? If it can be taken, it has any traction, it will. Nobody cares about products that are failing, generally speaking. They care about stuff that has traction. So if you're on Etsy, people have access to this. They can see how many likes, what products are popular, and that's the ones that are going to go knock off. And of course, that causes problems. I've had clients like, nobody's buying my product, they're buying the one that's $10 instead of mine for $100. So that's why we fight that fight. Okay, copyright is super simple. We talked about how it's protected upon creation, but the Copyright Office gives you better remedies to sue people if if I'm going to send a demand letter to someone, stop doing this, I want to be able to say, per U.S. copyright registration number blank, and attach that certificate. That's an important thing. It gives you, they're not going to want to hear about the Constitution and the protection. They want to see that you've done something to protect it. So it's a simple process to do, especially with works of visual art, photographs, original designs. You can see the fee is $65 for a standard online file. And then you can, if you adapt those, change them, do something with them, those are independently taxable works, which is pretty nice. And you'll see this, and this is something I hammer on clients all the time on kind of the business side of my practice. If you're hiring people to create original artwork, photographs for you, they might not like it, but if at all possible, in every circumstance, make sure that your contract specifies that you will own the copyright in whatever they're doing. People after the fact find out they have to go back to the artist, back to the photographer to get permission to do something else, or can I, adapt it and whatnot. They find out they don't know. You don't want to be in that spot. Okay, we're going to shift to enforcement defense, and this will touch on both a little bit copyright and trademark. Okay, Doug mentioned the first thing to do before choosing a trademark is don't infringe somebody else. Then secondarily, can I protect it for myself? So we're going to talk just quickly here about prevention. Okay, so I've lumped copyright and trademark together, right? But the first step, if you're going to be able, put yourself in a position, we're going right into enforcement, and we'll talk about this. To put yourself in a good spot to protect what you have, register it, register your copyrights, register your trademarks. You do get common law trademark rights for the trademark, but again, you want to rely on federal rights that you get with registration. Two, you've got to monitor. So, sometimes people have no idea that all of their stuff is sitting on Alibaba, right? Or AliExpress. They have no idea that all their stuff has been knocked off. Some offshore markets, you have to be in a spot where you're continually, in a common sense sort of way, not day and night. Like you have some kind of mechanism to go search for your own stuff and see where it's showing up. Images, whatnot, there's image searches you can do and things like that. If the stuff is sitting out there, you're going to find it, and then you've got to do something about it. Raise your hand if you've utilized some kind of takedown process on the online market. It could be eBay, it could be Etsy, it could be Amazon, all of them, every one of the e-commerce markets. Pinterest, you have the ability to go there and get them to take something down. You prove you own. Cease and desist letter. I deal with these. I'm usually the one sending them, but I also actually get it in spots where my clients get them. And so, dear so-and-so, please stop immediately. Stop what you're doing. Give me your merchandise. Don't ever do it again. I'm going to sue you if you don't. And you try to, in most circumstances, 99% of the time, you just resolve it. You reach some kind of accommodation agreement. Maybe you never hear from them. Maybe they just go away. They stop. Right, so that's, most of the time, 95% of the time, those do not go into any kind of court. No one wants to be in court. I don't want my clients to go to court. It's a pain in the ass. I've gone to trial on things, and it's a lot of work and time, and trouble and expense. So enforcing early and often kind of helps lay the groundwork for protection. If you do go to court, you can get those two things, damages and adjunctive producer tax. Okay, now let's talk about on the defense side. How do I avoid stepping on somebody else's stuff? I'll talk quickly about copyright and trademark. Okay, this is a circumstance that probably some of you have dealt with. If you're a t-shirt manufacturer, you're doing a heat transfer type process. This happened to me, like I went to Zazzle or one of these kind of places. I had come up with well, we'll talk about this scenario, we'll come back to that, and you'll see why I have a humorous moment on this. Okay, so somebody comes and uploads something, I need 1,000 of these, great, you do it. Customer didn't have the right to use it. You had no idea, it looked original to you. It's not like they came in with a picture of Mickey Mouse or Paul McCartney or something where you're like, you don't have the right to do that. You're not Paul McCartney and you don't represent it. It may be something you think is completely original. So they're liable if they get caught. They put the stuff all over the internet. Now they want to find out who produced it for them. And so they will find it. They'll tie it back. They can do discovery. And they'll say, well, what mechanisms did you have in place to make sure that when customers come to you, you're not just duplicating copyrighted images? Or were you on notice? Did you ask for it? Is this your design at least? Any kind of mechanism. Like I said, sometimes it's easy. It's like it's like some sports association from a little small community. That's not the issue we're talking about. But like I did get photographs or original art that appears to be like artwork, have some kind of mechanism. So how did I get tied into this? So my wife hates chips that have orange dust on them. So we're talking nacho cheese Doritos and Cheetos, right? I don't know why, but she doesn't like them. I like them, but they can't come into the house. And so occasionally I have to joke. I've got 3 daughters, they all like them. My wife's the one who doesn't like them. So just as a silly gift, I wanted to do a t-shirt that showed like a Cheetos bag and a Doritos bag, and then bust the dust at the top, like a little logo, like it was a political protest thing. And so I went to Zazzle or one of these places, uploaded it, and I get an email from them, like the next day saying, hello, so-and-so, we've reviewed your t-shirt, blah, blah, and we're not able to produce that for you. We'd like to talk to you about a t-shirt design that we might be able to produce. And so it's basically like, you put the Frito logo on there, you put the Cheetos and Doritos. Somehow, they must have had some kind of bot. I guess maybe they're doing it manually, like somebody's actually looking at each one. And I know they're obviously the manual part of the process. But somehow, so they refused to make it for me. And I was kind of annoyed, I was annoyed by that because I figured it'd be like, I'm going to upload whatever I want. And it's just like a single t-shirt that I was going to order. And they refused to do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to find a different platform that is going to make it for me. But I found I kept running into roadblocks, so I just ended up getting that. Actually, I've got one of these. I went to the art store where you can print something and then you try to put it on there with an iron and it would tear. So that was going to bust the dust, right? But you can be sued. So here's the thing, and this is something, and Doug will emphasize this. Anybody's dealt with litigation, anybody can go to court and sue you about anything. Now you may be completely frivolous to have it thrown out, but there's no gatekeeper on the front end if somebody files a complaint. And you may say, this is total bullshit, I never should have been sued. It could be anything, right? It could have been, I didn't cause that car crash, I was out of the country that day. It could be anything, but anybody can do this, and they'll sue who they think has money. So it's worth thinking carefully about this. Okay, copyright. What is copyright infringement? The easy one is, there's a photograph by Ansel Adams. It's cool to have mountains, and his images are still copyrighted, and I just take that and I just stick it on a t-shirt, or I'm producing it for a third party. That's easy, right? That's just straight duplication. I didn't create that. I may not even know, but I know I didn't do it, and so I did it. That's the easy one. The trickier one is when you have substantial similarity to a copyrighted work. Now, you have to have seen it. There has to be some evidence that you saw it. If you independently go create the same thing, like you think about photographs of the Statue of Liberty, right? There's only so many angles that you can take of that right? So if somebody says, well, you copied my photo. But you have to have some kind of access. You are copying somebody's work. It doesn't mean you did it by accident. You can't accidentally infringe somebody's copyright if you never saw their work. So they have to prove that. Sometimes it's obvious. It's like, really? You came up with something that looks exactly like that cartoon character? No, you didn't come up with that. Like that's, we're gonna go into your hard drives, we're gonna find it. So now, unlike patent stuff, trademark and copyright both have, there are criminal mechanisms. You're likely not going to run into this area unless you are producing infringing works on a large scale and making a lot of money. So those who are engaged in file sharing and Napster type activity know what I'm talking about. People making illegal compact disc factories in China, that kind of stuff we can shut down. Criminal stuff, you probably don't have to worry about that. Don't mass produce illegal merchandise. That's easy. Okay, here's the basic thing that you should have anytime you're going to use some kind of work. Right? If you know you created it, obviously, you have a right to use it. Assuming you did it completely original, you didn't adapt somebody else's thing. So, you created it, and you keep the ownership, and to use it. If you're an employee, and I say employee, not contractor for a reason, if you're an employee in your company creates it as part of their work duties, hey, so-and-so, go create an orchid design, this customer wants it. The company automatically owns them. If your contractor creates it, then you have a contract that says you're going to own it, you own it, and you can use it. If you just have them do it, and you don't specify the transfer of ownership, you have the right to use it, you don't own it, and you can run into issues later. If you go, let's say somebody is shutting down, like let's say a competitor is shutting down, and you buy all of their inventory of designs, and you know they're all original to them, then you can just buy all those copyrights and you have a right to keep using them. If you get a license to use the work, so if you're a licensee, I've had clients who were like Salt Lake Olympics, they were a licensee, they got to use the mascot designs to create figurines, whatever, like NFL licensees, name one you can think of. You get a license to do it. If you're an agent, so this thing's kind of silly, right? So I own the copyright and I hire you to make a bunch of t-shirts for me. In essence, if you just did it without knowing me, you'd just be infringing, right? You're doing it at my behest and I'm the owner, you're allowed to do that. And if the work is in the public domain, and this is a tricky thing, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, trademark infringement. So I do have